Well, hello, friends. As you can tell, we're back here in master control for the online worship experience. I appreciate your patience with me as I've been quarantined at the house, but we made do with the best we had to work with, and I'm glad that you're here this weekend because we continue in our series on Proverbs, and this weekend we're going to learn about what Solomon has to say about raising children and mentoring children, and our theme for the weekend is Let's Do It for the Kids. One thing I want to mention to you is coming up on February the 6th and then February the 13th. Of course, February 13th is Super Bowl Sunday. We're having our Super Bowl. That's S-O-U-P-E-R, Super Bowl. And we're asking all of our servant leaders, if you can, to bring 1 can of soup with you over those 2 Sundays to where we can take those and donate those to the Oak Mountain Food Pantry mission for those who are underserved right now. So it's a great way for us to kind of acknowledge what's going on in the world, so to speak, with the Super Bowl, but to also help those that are in need during this time. And the real winner will be the Oak Mountain Mission Food Pantry for that. Well, friends, let's gather now in worship today as we continue in the Proverbs.
Please join me for our opening prayer. Holy God, love through us as we worship your holy name. Love through us as we listen for your holy word. Love through us as we live your teachings and offer your love and grace to our world. We pray this in the transformational name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Our scripture lesson today comes to us from the Old Testament book of Proverbs, chapter 1, verse 8 through verse 10, along with chapter 22, verse 6. I will be reading today's passage from the English translation known as the New American Standard Bible. Proverbs 1, 8 through 10. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not ignore your mother's teaching, for they are a graceful wreath for your head and necklaces for your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. Proverbs 22, 6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he grows older, he will not abandon it. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Hey there, I hope you had a wonderful week. So right now what I'm going to do is read you a couple scriptures real quick, and then I've got some stuff in my bag I want to show you. Okay, so the scripture comes from Proverbs 1, and it's verses 8 and 9, and it says, Listen, my son, to your father's instructions. Don't neglect your mother's teachings, for they are graceful wreath on your head and beads for your neck. So it's kind of like it's decoration, right? Kind of cool. Okay, so when I was growing up, there were things that I had to do. And I really didn't like doing them, but I had to do them. But I brought some items with me today, and maybe this is something that you may have in common, okay? All right, so when I was growing up, one of the things that my mom and dad wanted me to do was eat a good breakfast. Now, I didn't want to eat a good breakfast. I wanted a chocolate donut, something like that, you know. But, or maybe even some like those little Debbie cookies. Oh, those are so good. I just thought about those. But that would have been something that I wanted to eat. But my mom and dad had other plans. They wanted me to eat things like oatmeal. Gross. But they said that it was going to make me grow big and strong. I didn't want to eat oatmeal, but I did. Okay, here's my oatmeal. Next thing is, you know when you get home from school and some of your friends probably get to watch cartoons or lay down and just relax or play video games or just do nothing. So the first thing I had to do when I got home from school was I had to do my homework or I had to read a book. So that was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to play. I wanted to go outside. I wanted to be with my friends, watch cartoons. But I had to read a book or I had to do my homework first. And then I could do all of those things. So it still worked. And with that, that made me find responsibility and priorities. Okay, so there's my book. Okay, next, I have my watch on. And the watch tells me time, or clocks tell me time. And I think about mom and dad with that because no matter where I was, they wanted to know where I was every minute of every day. Now, they wanted to know so they could keep me safe. I wasn't very happy with them having to know where I was all the time, but they wanted to keep me safe. Next thing, I bet you're going to recognize this. Dishwashing detergent and a sponge. Boys and girls, I had to do chores. I had to wash dishes. In my time, because I'm old and at my house, we didn't have a dishwasher. I was the dishwasher. So I had to wash dishes. And everybody in our household had to chip in, and we all had chores. We were all expected to do those things to help the family without even being told. Now, all of these things helped me. All those things came from wise moments from my mom and dad. Now, my mom and dad is in heaven now, but I'm instilling all of these things that they taught me onto my kids. Now, God can give us wisdom if we ask for it. This book right here, reading it, studying it, talking about it, talking to God, instills wisdom in us. It's got all the answers right here. In this Bible, we can find things that are going to help us grow strong and healthy, that are going to educate us and open our eyes to different things. that are God's going to be with us and make sure that He's with us every minute of every day. And we're all taught that we're all a big family and we all have something very important to do. Maybe not the dishes, but something very important to do in the life of the body of Christ. All of these things are wise things we need to search out. So this week, what I want you to do is, I want you to think about that. Think about these things. The washing detergent and the sponge, or the oatmeal for breakfast, still yuck, except for this one I brought is maple and brown sugar, so I will eat this one because it is like candy. Making sure that you're part of a body of Christ that you can contribute to, because everybody can. Asking God to make you wise so that you make wise decisions. Listening to our mother and father, and always listening to God. That is how we're going to get wise, boys and girls. So this week, find a way you can do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes and bow our heads, and we're going to lead our entire congregation in the Lord's Prayer. And we know it's the Lord's Prayer because the Bible tells us. This is the very same prayer that Jesus taught His disciples to pray, and we still do it now. That's a pretty wise decision on our part. So on the count of 3, ready? 1, 2, 3. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Have a great week.
Well, friends, today we're going to encounter part 5 of our Proverbs series entitled, Let's Do It for the Kids. You know, right now we have one in our house that is learning how to drive. And there's just something about being helpless on the passenger side of a vehicle when a 15-year-old is in control that makes you rethink a lot of your parenting decisions over the years. Well, today we're going to talk about the investment that we make in our young children, and also not just as parents, but as grandparents and as mentors. Now, if you're in the Chelsea area right now, there is a big debate on our school system and taxes and all those types of things. And this has absolutely nothing to do with any of that. We're going to be talking about, from a faith perspective, how we invest in our kids. And I want to make sure that you know that up front. One of the things that I've learned in being a parent of 2 boys now who are teenagers is that parenting a child is tough. And I can remember when Shelley and I found out that we were expecting our oldest, we got all these books and we started reading all these things, trying to prepare ourselves for this moment. But mentoring a child, parenting a child, it's just challenging. And what I discovered when I started reading these books and I started kind of researching the authors of these books is that many of these child experts, so to speak, didn't even have children. And I thought that was kind of odd that they were writing books on how to parent. In fact, I found one author whose name was Charlie Shedd, and he wrote a book that was going to be titled How to Raise Kids. Well, during the final edit of the book, he found out that he and his wife were expecting their very first child. So he sent it on to the publisher, but he changed the title to Some Suggestions on How to Raise Kids. And after a second child, the publishing company wanted him to do an updated version of the book because it had been successful. And then he changed the title again to Helpful Hints on Raising Children. Well, the book continued to do well, and they wanted to do another upgrade of it. And by then, the Shedd family had a third child, so he changed the book Feeble Attempts for Fellow Strugglers. Parenting is just a big challenge. And today we want to take a look from these ancient words of Solomon, and we want to look at how children are impacted by the investment we make in them. Because there's three primary influences in the lives of kids. You have God, you have parents, and you have friends. Now, over the years, I've seen a lot of families that were branded for whatever reason as bad families in the community, but they produced bad kids. Well, that seems like a natural thing, course of action there, right? I've seen families that were branded by the community for whatever reason as good families that produce great kids. But I've also seen some great families produce some children with horrible behavior and children from some horrific family situations where you wouldn't think they had a single shot at life, but they turned out to be some of the most productive citizens in all of the community. It does happen. And today we want to talk about how we can enhance the odds that we will be raising kids, mentoring kids, and investing in kids who will become a people who choose to love God and choose to love others. As followers of Jesus, that's what we should want to do. You know, when you think about it, our world kind of places a lot of emphasis. In fact, it could be said that they applaud titles, career advancement, total tolerance, not necessarily discipline, independence, freedom, and anything that would be considered more. In fact, most parents will say, if they're honest, I want my children to have it better than I did. But what happens in a society like that is it becomes a society in which people can sire kids but no longer raise children. And most families in North America are raising kids who are experience rich but relationship poor. So how do we as parents and grandparents and mentors break away from those situations and where we may have great experiences, but we're not having great relationships? Because just because you can afford a trip to Disney does not make you the perfect parent. It really is all about the relationships. But I will tell you this, that it takes a person that is very serious about the next generation and investing in them to raise children. Now, Proverbs gives us wisdom for how to parent well. Now, lots have been written about raising children and grandchildren. And in the book of Proverbs, Solomon gives some definitions to some words that sometimes we interchange with each other thinking they're the same thing, but they're not. In fact, he would say that knowledge is when we have the facts, and facts are stubborn things. They can't be refuted. He would also say that understanding is the ability to discern what all those facts mean and how they kind of fit together in the big picture, so to speak. But Solomon would say that wisdom is knowing how to apply the knowledge, knowing how to apply the understanding and translating it into the everyday life. Now, as followers of Jesus, we want to take the teachings of Jesus and the life of Jesus and translate it into everyday life. That's why we spend time in worship. That's why we spend time in small groups. That's why we spend time studying the Bible. We want to know how to make a difference in everyday life. So the first instruction that King Solomon gives us in these ancient words is to encourage his child to resist sin and to resist sinners, or we would call it peer pressure. Some of you have heard me talk about when my Papa Scott turned 100 years of age. And I asked him about that time, and he died a few months after he turned 100, but I asked him, I said, Papa Scott, what's the best part about living to be 100 years of age? And just as dry as he could, he said, well, I don't have to worry about peer pressure anymore. He had outlived all the people that were his friends who were his age. He had to worry about peer pressure. But the reality is that peer pressure is something that we're going to deal with no matter what age we are, whether you're in elementary school, junior high, high school, college, or in the career world. Peer pressure is a very real thing. And knowing this, King Solomon, he emphasizes that the key to successful parenting is holy living. And that's just an awareness that the presence of God is much more important than the worldly success. Now, the word for way in the Hebrew is often spelled, in English looks like it spells Derek with an underline under the K, but it's Derek, or like the direction, is the root word for that. And it's actually a reference to a habit or to a habitual way of life. Now, we were a little short on the orange ping pong ball budget this year for Morning Star, but I have a friend whose church did this, and I'm just going to use their picture to show you this illustration here. If you think about it, parents on average have about 3,000 hours a year, represented by that big tower of the orange ping pong balls you see on the right. That's how many hours a year they have with their children. The church, on the other hand, has about 40 hours a year on average, and that's represented by the small container that you see there on your left. Now, the school system gets about 1,200 hours per year. Now, what is the point in that? Well, the point is the church is here to partner with you as you walk out discipleship with your children and with your grandchildren. We don't have enough hours as the church or enough influence to be the main source of discipleship for your children or for your grandchildren. And since the church has so few hours, as you see in this image here, to influence the young ones, we must have the involvement of the parents, of the grandparents, and the mentors to make an impact. Now, with the law of averages, that's about 160 hours in the preschool years, 240 hours in the elementary years, and 420 hours in the teen years. And what I think about when I see that image of the ping pong balls and regard to how much time a parent has, how much time the church has, it reminds me that the way that we invest our time as parents and the way we invest our time as mentors, that it really is important. Because parents and grandparents, one day, your children, your grandchildren, they'll also stand before King Jesus. And I can assure you right now that Jesus will care very little about their grades, their batting averages, their three-point percentages, their yards per carry, their popularity, how many people are following them on social media, their college transcripts, or their class rank. But I can assure you, because 1 out of 1 people die when our children or when our grandchildren stand before Jesus, He's going to be concerned about their soul. How are we investing in their souls? Because that's what matters the most to Jesus. The one thing Jesus does care about, the human soul. And we know that He cares a lot about the human soul because He gave His life for our soul. And when we see our parenting and our grandparenting and our mentoring roles as being a missionary and our children kind of like being the mission field, it will change how we view everything that falls under the category of parenting or mentoring here in the U.S. Because we can lead our kids from feeling entitled, which focuses primarily on what they think they deserve. But every single time, my friend, entitlement is going to lead to disappointment. We can actually change the entitlement culture that now exists when we change our perspective on things. And that's what Solomon's trying to do for us. Now, for Christ followers, the primary goal of parenting is not that we raise children who are self-sufficient and contribute to society, but that we raise children who know God, for that is true wisdom. Listen to Solomon's words in Proverbs 2. My son, if you will receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom and incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He's a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice, and He watches over the way of His godly ones. You see, the follower of Jesus should want their young ones to understand that they are not to simply live just for themselves, but for others too, as Jesus taught. You know, a major part of being a wise parent, being a wise grandparent, a wise mentor, is realizing that God is ultimately in control. Now, some of you may be familiar with the game Yahtzee. And just like so many decisions in life, including parenting and mentoring, there's an element of chance every time we roll the dice. Loving our young ones in a stable and a loving home can set them up well for life, but there is no guarantee. Proverbs reminds us that in everything, including the seemingly random roll of the dice, that God is involved, that God is in control. But what do we do in the meantime in making sure that we're setting them up to do well and to serve well in this life? Well, Solomon tells us that we're to treat the children the way God treats the children. Treat the children the way God treats the children. Now, God is not saying be perfect in the way that we use the word perfect in our culture. But God does command, friends, for us to treat, to think, and to discipline our children the same way. Not the way the culture, not the way the flesh or our anger leads us to do. We're to treat our children as God treats the child, with love and with discipline. And discipline is never about punishment, but about correcting a path that will help the child stray away from experiencing a lot of the harsh consequences in life that come with making poor choices. Listen to what God says in Deuteronomy for us. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. These words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. You see, God is telling everyone that it begins with you as a parent. And so today, when I'm thinking about this as a parent, it all begins with me. Not with the kids, not with the grandparents. It begins with me. You see, God has no grandchildren. God has no great-grandchildren. God has no adopted children. God has children. And my sons will not make it to heaven because of my faith journey, just like I can't make it to heaven because of my parents' faith journey. 2 Corinthians reminds us of this. Test yourselves to make sure you are solid in the faith. Don't drift along taking everything for granted. Give yourselves regular checkups. You need firsthand evidence, not mere hearsay, that Jesus Christ is in you. Test it out. If you fail the test, do something about it. You see, friends, we can teach what we know, but we will only reproduce what we are. Our kids will be a reproduction of what we are. And I mean more than just in the way they look or their mannerisms or maybe the way that they walk. Because they're watching the way that we treat people. They're watching the way that we respond to problems, the way that we treat our living parents, the way that we spend, the way that we invest our money. They're watching what gets us angry and the jokes that we laugh at and the jokes that we tell. You see, we communicate with everything we do and everything we say. And the primary question is this. It's not what are we communicating, not if we are communicating. The question is, what are we communicating, not if we are communicating. We communicate with everything we do and everything that we say. There was an old song that was out in the 60s called The Cat's in the Cradle. And if you've ever heard that song, it's been recorded by several artists after that. But the kid becomes exactly what his dad was like because that is what the child saw modeled before him every single day. You see, our convictions will be passed on to our children, and our convictions are different from our beliefs because our convictions are the things we live by each day. Our beliefs are the things we have strong opinions about. But our children, they're not going to necessarily follow our beliefs, but they will follow our convictions. That is why it begins with us as parents, as grandparents, as mentors. Because being a follower of Jesus and a parent means that a parent must be a mentor, a counselor, a disciplinarian, a friend, and a sibling in Christ. And that's a lot of job responsibilities under one title. But that's what comes along with being a parent. You know, I'm at the age now to where our oldest boy is getting ready to enter into the 11th grade in the fall. 2 more years and he's going to college. And our youngest son is right there behind him by just 1 year. And I get to thinking about all these things that I want to make sure that they know before they go out into the quote-unquote real world. What will our legacy be? Well, friends, if we wish to create a family legacy, we must do what we should. Do what we should. I just call that being faithful. In Luke 16, this is what Jesus says, "He who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much. And he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you?" Sometimes we can use the excuse of, I wish we had a bigger this or a bigger that for our children. I wish we had more of this or more of that for our children. But why would God trust us with more if we cannot be faithful with what we consider little that we have right now? You see, this applies to every detail across the board of life's events and life's realities, because God desires for us to be faithful with everything God has given us. Now, for the church, we're called to be mentors if we're not the parent. If we're the parent, we're called to be parents. If we're the grandparents, we're called to be wise mentors as well. But we're to invest in our children by our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and our witness. And if we're waiting on having a bigger facility or more youth involved or more children involved, then friends, we may never get to the point to where you think we're not waiting. We have to be involved now because they're only little for a short little while. And if we wish to create a family legacy, not only should we do what we should, be faithful, but do what we could by being sacrificial. 2 Corinthians, Paul says, "For I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability, entirely on their own. They urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the Lord's people." Being faithful means that we're going to have to make a sacrifice. It could be our time. It could be our money. It could be the strengths that we have. But great things happen to people who understand sacrificial giving of their time, of their income, of their talent, and of their ability. Because God truly begins to bless us when we step into loving and giving sacrificially in order for God's legacy to be implanted in the lives of others. You see, God understands more than anyone what it means to give sacrificially, because God gave God's very best. God placed God's self in the human form of flesh that we know as Jesus. God knows what it's like to sacrifice in order to invest in others. That's how greatly God values us, just like we're supposed to value our children, our grandchildren, and the children that's in our community. If we wish to create a family legacy, not only are we to be faithful, not only are we to be sacrificial, but if we want to create a family legacy, we must do what we could do if ... That means be hopeful. Those things that you would do only if God would do something specific. Just do them right now and watch God move. It will be amazing as we watch God bless. Listen to the letter to the church at Corinth. "Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God." You see, friends, God has given us the ability to plant a lot of seed, and we should be planting seed every single place we go. Not just in our community of faith, but in our community, not just locally, not just regionally, and not just internationally, but a little bit in all of those things. Because leaving a legacy is all about what people will know long after we are gone from this side of eternity, not about what they know about you now. Leaving a legacy is all about what people will know long after we are gone from this side of eternity, not about what they know about you now. But here's the thing, if we want to truly leave a legacy as parents, as grandparents, and a mentor, we must do things now if we wish to leave a legacy for them to know and learn about. We all can, if we desire to do so, make a real difference in the life of a child. We're going to be providing you in a big announcement next weekend about a great opportunity that's going to be able to help you disciple and to invest in the lives of your loved ones. When you have the opportunity to serve in children's ministry, ask Kimberly. She'll give you many ways that you can serve and not even being the teacher, but things that we can do. Ask Haley when it comes to serving our youth. Look for ways for us to be involved in the community. Work with our leadership team, and let's see what God can do when we're willing to create a legacy. Friends, let's do it for the kids. And when we do it for the kids, in the end, we're doing it for the kingdom. We're teaching them to love God and to love others. Now that's true wisdom.
Jesus, let your kingdom come here. Let your will be done here in us. Jesus, there is no one greater. You alone are Savior. Show the world your love. King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come now. Let your glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, rise up. Who can stand against us?
here are our questions for reflection. This week's topic can be difficult for those who do not have children or grandchildren. How can those without children or grandchildren still play a role in the community of faith and the community at large? This week's topic can be difficult for those who do not have children or grandchildren. How can those without children or grandchildren still play a role in the community of faith and the community at large? Are you intentional about teaching your children about your faith? Why or why not? Are you intentional about teaching your children about your faith? Why or why not? Oftentimes, parents do not want to push their faith onto their children, and so they don't talk about it. How does this approach fail to see the influence of other worldviews on children? Oftentimes, parents do not want to push their faith onto their children, and so they don't talk about it. How does this approach fail to see the influence of other worldviews on children? Why do you think Deuteronomy 6 focuses so much on why it is important to God that we teach our children what we believe? Why do you think Deuteronomy 6 focuses so much on why it is important to God that we teach our children what we believe? How can we handle the uncertainty of parenting? How can we turn to God in trust, knowing that God is ultimately in control? How can we handle the uncertainty of parenting? How can we turn to God in trust, knowing that God is ultimately in control? Are you striving to leave a legacy for your loved ones? Are you striving to leave a legacy for your loved ones?
Please join me for our closing prayer. Let us remember Jesus, who believed in people and never despaired of them, who through all disappointment never lost heart, who disregarded his own comfort and convenience and thought first of others' needs, and, though he suffered long, was always kind, who, when he was reviled, uttered no harsh word in return, and when he suffered, did not threaten retaliation, who humbled himself and carried obedience to the point of death, even death on the cross, wherefore God has highly exalted him. O Christ, our only Savior, so come to dwell in us that we may go forth with the light of your hope in our eyes and with your faith and love in our hearts. Amen.
From the rising of the sun to the going down of the same, the name of the Lord will be praised. From the rising of the sun to the going down of the same, the name of the Lord will be praised. So praise ye the Lord. Praise ye the Lord. From the rising of the sun to the going down of the same, the name of the Lord shall be praised.
Well, friends, I look forward to worshiping with you again next weekend here online or live and in person at 9 or 11 on our campus. Don't forget to bring your can of soup if it's on the 6th or the 13th of February, as we have our Super Bowl to bring collected items together for the Oak Mountain Mission Food Pantry. Blessings on you, and I look forward to seeing you next week when we've got a really big announcement to make. I mean, it's a really big announcement. Can you keep a secret? Well, I can too. I'll tell you next week. Blessings on you.